In the back of the right, sir?
How are you going to deal with China and its subsidies of different industries, such as one I was reading about today, the glass industry, which has collapsed here, the loss of manufacturing jobs, and the fact that China and steel also, yes, and the fact that China does not let its currency revalue.
Yes. What most people on Washington don't understand is in the short run, that subsidy is the only thing that's standing between us and economic collapse. China right now is our biggest benefactor in that if it weren't for China, interest rates would be much higher right now and consumer prices would be much higher. They are delivering a gigantic subsidy to the American economy. Now that said, I wish it would stop because they're acting as an enabler. They're like the drug pusher keeping our phony economy growing. I don't want the Chinese government buying all the government bonds because if they stop buying it, maybe our government would stop spending because the only reason they can borrow is because the Chinese are lending. I don't want that. Now, I would love it if Chinese invested in private businesses, if they made direct investments in this country with entrepreneurs, but I don't want the Chinese government loaning money to our government because that's undermining our economy. The bigger our government gets, the weaker our economy becomes. So we have to prepare for the day when the Chinese come to their senses, stop throwing good money after bad, and let that RMB go up. Because when that happens, it's going to hurt us, not them. Because when the Chinese currency goes up, everybody in China gets a raise. Every worker in China has higher purchasing power. And you know what they're going to do? They're going to buy stuff. All the products that the Chinese have been shipping over here, they're not going to ship them over here anymore. They're going to buy them themselves. And Walmart's shelves, they'll be empty. We're not going to have that stuff. All we're going to have is the money that the Federal Reserve prints. And if the Chinese don't supply us with the merchandise, all we get is inflation. And if the Chinese aren't buying our bonds, no one else is going to buy our bonds. Because right now, everybody is trying to stay competitive with the RMB. But once the Chinese stop buying, the Japanese start buying, the Koreans stop buying, everybody pulls out. Because that is the reality. When our politicians pretend that they want the Chinese to float their currency, that's all this is pretend. That's the last thing they want. They want the Chinese to keep buying our bonds so they can keep spending that borrowed money and keep getting reelected. And in the end, we have to realize that what we need to do is make our own stuff. We have to manufacture our own things. We have bought into this myth, sold to us by the Keynesian economists and the politicians, that we can have a service sector economy, that we don't need to make anything, that we don't need to manufacture, that we can just run perpetual trade deficits forever. We can't do that. We worked for a while, but now we're paying the price. So we need to realize that we need to make stuff for ourselves. And we can't do that until government gets out of the way, until we reduce spending and reduce regulation and reduce taxes so we can be competitive. And we can outcompete China, and it's not all about wages. Japan and Germany both have trade surpluses with China, and their wages are higher than ours. So what we need is more economic freedom, and then we can produce. Yeah.
You believe in a flat tax? Last question.
Yeah, I believe in a flat tax of zero, ideally. I think that we should not be taxing income. I think the best way to tax is consumption. Because if somebody is earning a lot of money but not spending it, what are they doing with it? Well, they're investing it. That means everybody benefits. If I earn money and put it in the bank, that means it's available to be loaned out to a businessman so he can make the capital investments necessary to grow the economy and increase employment. You know, everybody talks about the fact that we need more credit for business. Well, where do they think credit comes from? It comes from savings. We're not going to get more credit until we have more savings. We're not going to have savings if we tax it all away and if we keep interest rates at zero so that nobody pays. And certainly, how are we going to have any savings if we're running huge deficits and the government is borrowing it all? Or how are we going to have savings if the government is guaranteeing mortgage debt or credit card debt or auto loans? How is an entrepreneur going to compete with a government guaranteed loan? He can't do it. So we need to get government out of the credit markets so that we can grow small businesses, but we don't want to tax it. Now, if we can't abolish the income tax and replace it with a sales tax or something like that, then let's at least flatten it out. Let's make everybody pay the same rate of tax. So that somebody who earns $1 million, maybe he's paying 15%, and someone that earns $100,000 is paying 15%. Obviously, the guy that earns $1 million is paying 10 times as much, but it's the same rate. And the reason that's so important is right now you have people like Barack Obama saying, let's raise taxes on the rich. then they'll think twice about it before they vote. And the problem is, we're vilifying the people that we need to glorify. We're trying to paint the wealthy as some kind of evil class that's doing harm. The reason that we have jobs is because there's wealth. The reason that the only reason there's jobs is because of profits and because of capital. And without profits and capital, no one's going to get a job from anybody. You can't get a job from somebody who can't give you tools. They have to have the capital. And no one is going to employ you if they can't make a buck in the process. Businessmen are not a bunch of, we're not in it to do good. Right? I didn't start my business. I employ over 100 people, and I think a lot of clients around the world, around the country and around the world, have benefited from my advice. But I didn't go into business because I wanted to be a benefactor. I went into business because I wanted to make money for myself. But in pursuing my own self-interest, I helped a lot of people. Now, I also know that it's in my self-interest to think long-term. Right? I never took a shortcut. I never put my clients in the dot-com stock, or I never bought into conventional wisdom to get rich quick. When I first started out, and I was cold calling again and telling people to get out of the dot-coms, most of my friends who stayed at those Wall Street firms, they made a lot more money than I did because they took shortcuts. But I wanted to put my clients' interest first, not simply because I was a good guy, but because I thought in the long run, if I did what was best for my clients, then in the long run, that would be best for me. That I would build up a reputation in a free market, and that reputation would have value. And now most of the people who I worked at Wall Street with, they're not even stockbrokers anymore. They're gone. They're doing something else. And I've built up a phenomenal business because of that long-term approach. And that's the beauty of capitalism. And rather than looking for the businessman and try to vilify him and punish him and say, you've got too much, let's glorify him. And we have to get around that. We're a capitalist country. We were built on capitalism. Why do we want to attack it? Why do we want to vilify it? Anyway, I know I'm running out of time. So. My campaign headquarters are in Milford, and my office, I'm there once in a while, just up the street on the Post Road if you're at the Capitol. So come by or go to the campaign headquarters, and the website is schiff4senate.com if you want to check that out. And also, if you have some time, put my name into YouTube, put it into Google, read some of the stuff, watch some of the videos, read Crash Proof. See the things that I actually said. Don't take my word for the fact that I called all this stuff. Research it yourself. Anyway, thanks.
Thank you.